Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have the next video for you in the French line. This is the TD, the Tier 8, the AMX AC48. As always, have a look at the tech spec, and we'll use blitzhanger.com for that, which is a great asset for all blitzes, and you should use it. Now, this is a good, very good TD. It's very effective as its job, and it can do a couple of jobs. It can be an actual TD. It can also be a medium support vehicle. In terms of provisions, you may want to use can pede. It gives you better view range, faster reload, but protective kit is also an option. It depends on your playstyle. There are two guns, 100mm, 120mm top gun, both good options, but the 120mm has better pen. The 100mm has better DPM. So it depends. My personal preference is to go for the 120mm because if you're up tiered, you will need it against big armor joints in tier 9. HE gives you 65mm of pen and 550 and plus DP, so load up some HE with this gun because you will be able to pen the backs and sides of most medium and all light tanks. You'll even be able to pen some light tanks front on and get those big alpha rolls going. Now, if you use muzzle velocity, if you use supercharge, you get the muzzle velocity to 1387 meters per second, up from 1067 meters per second, and you get 1734 with supercharge, 1734 meters per second on APCR rounds, which is great for a tier 8. You've got a 10.10 second reload if you use the 120mm gun, and 6.74 second with the 100mm gun, which is why in tier you have better DPM on the lower gun, the 100mm. But of course, if you don't pen, you don't get your DPM numbers, and if you're up tiered against a big heavy German tier 9, or you're up against a 100p, the 120mm gun is going to give you better actual DPM. There's 6 degrees gun depression. That's a significant decrease from the previous gun, so be aware of that. The tanks look the same. From the previous tank, the tanks look the same but different gun depression. 50 kilometers an hour in a straight line. This tank is fast. There's great power to weight ratio. This tank can move, and you're going to see that in the gameplay. This tank can get around the map very quickly. Concealment numbers are very good when you're inactive, but when you fire, you lose 50 meters of view range protection. So just be aware of that. When you fire, you're going to be 50 meters nearer within your view range. So just be aware of that when you fire. Now, the frontal armor on this thing is great, particularly if you're top tier. You're going to bounce shots all day long. At the sides and back, you're unprotected, right? But that's a feature of this entire French range from tier 7 all the way up to tier 10. Sides and back are very vulnerable, but front on, this thing is a monster. Even if you're up tiered, you're going to get bounces. But against the biggest guns, you're going to get bounces on this frontal armor. It's really good. At very acute angles, you can side scrape as well, but I wouldn't rely on that. You'll also see that in the gameplay too. Now, also note this this gun mantlet. It sticks out like a nose, like a snout on a dog, right? And that creates awkward angles, and that will get you additional bounces, particularly if you're wiggling and jiggling from side to side. And we're going to have a look at some gameplay where you actually see a bounce directly off this gun mantlet, this snout, from an IS-3, so from quite a big gun as well. This creates an even more difficult part of the tank to pen front on, particularly if you're side onto that with the snout facing at an acute angle into the big gun. You can see here, if you're top tier, this thing is almost impenetrable front on. Against your own tier, still very strong. And even when up tiered, you're still going to get some bounces. You will get up tiered eventually in this tank, and you've probably noticed recently with the games in play that if you have a win rate over 55%, you're going to get up tiered almost every game. I don't know what War Gaming are doing, but they're messing around with the algorithm for matchmaking, because I've noticed on my accounts that I can go a whole day without being top tier, which is not something that used to happen before. So they're obviously messing around. They deny this, of course, but they're always messing around with the algorithms to gain data. So sometimes they're messing around with number of matches played, sometimes they're messing around with number of battles, sometimes they're messing around with win rate, etc. So sometimes average damage and things like that. At this time, I think they're messing around with win rates. They deny it, of course, but the evidence seems to suggest they're doing something. Now we're going to have a look here at this tank in action. This is just a clip of gameplay. We're going to have a look at this tank's frontal arm in action. So you see here This is against the IS-3, by the way. That bounces not from the SP1C. This is against the IS-3, which is a big gun, right? And you see off the top of that armour, it bounces. And you can see both the strengths and weaknesses in this bit of footage, which is why I want to show it. Now here, I'm going to slow it right down. This is exactly what I was talking about in the tech spec when we look at this snout on the mantlet. See that straight off the snout? And that's pretty much right in front of the IS-3, and he gets a big bounce there. And the IS-3 is a big gun, right? So then we go through. I have a better reload. I know it's a free shot for me because he is reloading. Now this is what I mean about the side scraping. You see I go too far and he gets around right into the side of me. Now the SP1C is going to put one into the side of me too when I front onto the IS-3. See the sides, there's very vulnerable. But again, front on, you see another bounce from the IS-3. If you're brawling or if you're going up against the reds in this thing, if you can keep your front armour facing them, you will get bounces. And that's just a small example of that in action, but also showing that once your sides are back or on, you're going to get penned even by smaller caliber guns like the one on the SP1C. But front on, this thing is very effective. And we're going to have a look at some full game here. This is a mastery game, it's Supremacy, and it's on Canal. Now, those of you who've watched my videos regularly will notice that when I check the setup here, I often go to A for if I'm in a fast moving TD for two reasons. One, it's to capture A quickly. Two, if you go with a TD that has good frontal armour like this, like a Frech, like one of the Russians, you are going to front on to the enemy, therefore you have a good chance of clearing them off. And it's difficult for them to get around the sides and back of you. And also then, this position on top to the right of A is a brilliant sniping position on this map. You can fire across almost 180 degrees of the map. So it's really very effective firing position where you can do damage and do your sniping role. You know, we've discussed the difference between sniping and camping before. Some people don't understand the difference. I've actually done a video on that, so if you want a refresher or you're unsure what the difference is, have a look at the sniping video on the channel. There's also a guide on TDs as well if you're new to the TD range and want a few tips on how to play TD effectively. Now you can see here, I'm in a beautiful position here now in this tank. I've done a good job for my team. I've captured A. Supremacy maps, it's all about capturing bases, it's all about points. And so many times games are won on points, so you should not neglect capturing bases. And also the earlier you capture bases, the better. There's also a video on Supremacy play on channel as well. So you can see here the difference between firing at a relatively short distance and a relatively further distance. Now what I should have done was I should have switched up to APCR, because APCR is 300 plus meters per second faster muzzle velocity. I might have had a better chance of hitting the T44 then. But anyway, and that's the difference in why muzzle velocity is so important when you're playing sniping and why I always use supercharge on TDs. Muzzle velocity is key. It makes your firing over distance easier. It also makes penetration more likely, and it also eases up your use of deflection shooting. Deflection shooting is basically where you need to fire in front of a target, judging its speed versus your muzzle velocity to make sure you hit. Deflection shooting is easier the faster the shell is. Basic physics. You can see here now I'll put another one into the T44, hit. I already have a gold ribbon on damage. Now my team were not, let's say, the best team in the world in this game. And they kind of dropped like flies here. We went from 5-3 down to, we're going to go to a Kolobanov situation. Now we're down to a Kolobanov situation. Now when you're in a Kolobanov situation like this, in a TD, it presents you with some difficulties. You need a plan. The problem you face is that, and because there's a medium tank in your team, their view range is better than mine. They're going to spot me earlier. And even though this, I have full hit points, they can fire at me from 3 different directions. You see here exactly what I said. That T44 spotted me up before I ever saw him. Now, I'm going to use the dip, the rock and the dip in the hill here to give me cover from the right side and the back. And I'm just going to face onto him, and I managed to clear him off. So that's a T44, and it's the biggest danger for me out of the way. Because I know that the AMX that's left is on really low hit points. He's probably going to, most likely for him, the best strategy is to go and get base points. So it's just me and the Tiger 2. I don't really know where the AMX is, but my immediate problem is the Tiger 2. Again, I go face on. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to use the bottom of this hill to protect my lower plate, so that I can fire into him, and he only has the top plate to fire at here, which is extremely difficult to pen. And now I'm going to move out because I know I've got a one shot to kill him. I know he's got a faster reload than me, but nonetheless I don't really mind because I'm front onto him. Clear him off. I'm going to go look for the AMX now, but probably I'm not going to be able to find or catch him because of his superior view range and speed. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to C to win on points. We're ahead on points now, so the advantages are with me. If the AMX does try to go capture C or D, then I'm going to know where he is. So the advantages are with me now. And there we go, before I can even get to C, we win on points. And that is the value and what I said earlier about why it's important to capture bases so early on when you play Supremacy. So, there we go, Mastery game, almost 4.2k damage, 4 kills. And you can see a bit of a carry from me, almost 4 times more than the next amount of damage done on my team. And this is a good game showing how effective this tank can be, playing in its traditional TD role, but then when it needs to move, you can see how agile it is. It gets around the map. If I needed to capture bases, I could also do that. And playing to the strengths and able to carry the win for my team with a Kolobanov. So I think, you know, this tank is in many ways quintessential TD. It has that big gun, it can fire across distances with it, its muzzle velocity is pretty good, and you can do damage and farm damage for your team. However, if you're top tier, you can also go front line in this team, because when you're front on, as we saw against the IS-3 and again against the Tiger 2 there, you can get bounces. So it offers a couple of different game styles or game variations in its play, which makes it exciting and more interesting. See, there's also Sniper Tanker medal as well in this game. You know, as I've said before, more important than mastery badges when you're playing the TD is Sniper Tanker badges, it's Confederate badges, and it is high caliber that is doing the most damage in a game. That shows that you're contributing and playing your role well. Now, that's a recap. I think this is a great TD, really solid performer. I like it a lot. I really do. Has great frontal armour and it'll bounce shots, even against big guns like the IS-3 as you saw there. And you can have confidence in the armour. It's agile and mobile TD. It gets around the map, as you saw. Once I needed to move in the Canal game, and also when I was going to A, this tank is pretty fast. 100mm gun or 120mm gun are very good options, but I like the 120mm in case I'm up tiered. You get 1387 meters per second muzzle velocity on AP and HE with supercharge. I would use supercharge if you're playing a TD. 6 degrees of gun depression is not much, and it's a big decrease on the previous tank, so just be aware of that. Your sides and back are very vulnerable, as we discussed, and therefore you're going to be a HE magnet. Rim Borsig or a waffle tractor is going to love your butt, so just be aware of that. Therefore I'd run 2 repair kits, because you don't want to get perma-tracked if you're moving from spot to spot in this tank. When you're playing it, play safe at the start, play traditional TD, but when you get more comfortable, you can be more adventurous, you can go and support your mediums because it has the mobility to do that. The music is Saint-Cyr Danse Macabre, beautiful piece of music, and often backs Can-Can from Orpheus in the Underworld. Can-Can is Orpheus and his departed but much loved wife dancing for eternity in Hades. So I hope you enjoyed that. Now, I guess what remains for me to say is thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Cheers, Mush. And I guess all that remains for me to say is pants off.